So today we are looking at how we can kind of leverage the features of Google Classroom in ways that help us differentiate to meet the needs of all of our learners. So as I was sharing with one of our attendees here just a moment ago, there is no expectation that the things I will be talking about in Google Classroom are completely new to you. Google Classroom has a fairly finite or limited set of tools available. We're just going to be looking at them with the lens of differentiation, in the sense of we can plan for the needs of all of our learners and maybe use Google Classroom in ways that help support those learners to be successful. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we'll do kind of a mix of some pieces will be in the slide deck and others will be in Google Classroom as demonstrations. Okay. And then that's how we will get started today. So here's our agenda. We'll be looking at where in Google Classroom we can differentiate, how we can differentiate it. We'll look at some logistics. There's one piece in particular in Google Classroom logistically that'll be really important. Some additional considerations for differentiation in Google Classroom, and then we'll actually go to a framework for differentiation that I think most of you have probably heard of before, but we're going to look at it with a lens to how the things we will have already talked about by that point today, how those things in the framework are actually possible with what we've talked about in Google Classroom. And then there's resources at the end. So we can differentiate in both the stream and in classwork. The stream is primarily for announcements, but one aspect of differentiation that we'll see a little bit later works regardless of whether you are in the stream or in classwork. And then classwork does also offer some additional opportunities for differentiation. One of the key features of differentiating for our learners is actually ensuring that the content we provide to them, the new lesson materials, as well as practice opportunities, include support resources that will ensure that all learners can be successful. So again, as I said earlier, this might be something you are already doing, but we can actually build in some supports whenever we create an announcement or an assignment in Google Classroom. For example, if you have print instructions, which most of us would have in Google Classroom, since it has a pretty limited set of how we can type our instructions, right? We can't change the size, we can't use color or bold or underline or even bulleted lists. So it has a fairly limited text editor. And so if your students are dependent on reading those instructions, we might want to supplement them with uploaded audio or video, which can be easy, but it is an additional step. I do recognize that. And one way to get that uploaded audio or video, I think a lot of us are using Screencastify right now in order to create our lesson videos. When you finish recording in Screencastify, you actually have an option to download the audio only. So even though at the time you record your instructions, it might look like a video of you talking, and you could do that. You could make it a video and download that and then put that in Google Classroom. But if you wanted it to be audio only, you could actually record your instructions in Screencastify, save those to your, either to your computer or to your Google Drive. But when you do so, choose that you only want to save the audio. And then you can share that audio alongside those print instructions in Google Classroom. That's one way. There's actually a lot of ways to get recorded audio. Some people find it faster to just use their phone and then send that recording, or drop it into their Google Drive if they have the Google Drive app on their phone. Some people use Vocaroo, V-O-C-A-R-O-O, which does it. All it is an online recorder, and it does not save anything. So it's critical that you download your finished recording. But it makes it really easy to make recordings because it's just not that highly featured. And all it does is provide a really quick access online voice recorder. Hi, welcome. It sounds like someone just joined us. So I'm going to put the link to our slide deck in the chat. We are recording this training, so don't worry about it. We just started. You haven't missed very much, but if you're worried about what you missed, this recording will be in the hub sometime today. I have a pretty tight schedule and I have 3 more trainings today. So sometime between today and tomorrow, all those things will get put in the hub. And then do consider also, you could include images. it's unfortunate that it's not possible to kind of lay out and design posts in Google Classroom so that images can be embedded within them. But you can always upload an image or attach one from your Google Drive. So if there is an image that would support the instructions, or an image that helps clarify the meaning of some of the words in the assignment or words in the instructions, you can actually attach that to that assignment or to that post in the stream in Google Classroom. Some learners are very well supported when they actually can see examples and models of how a task is to be done or what a completed task would look like. And so, similar to anything else, because the process in Google Classroom is the same, you can actually upload examples or models. So you would, the point would be, you would have, for example, for an assignment, you would have the instructions, and then when it goes down beneath the instructions where it says add, you would click the add button, and then you can add as many things as you want. You don't have to add just one thing. So you can add the Google Docs template that the students are going to use to create their assignment, the audio recording of the instructions, and a link to an example or model of it for them. One thing that's become very popular right now, understandably so, it's very engaging, are, for example, either activities using Google Slides that are like master slides templates and that are pretty heavy in graphics. And don't worry, I'm going to show some examples of this, and we'll go into Google Classroom too in a little bit, but that have a lot of graphics. And there's a lot of time put into these activities in order to design them, choose the colors, choose the graphics, create what parts will stay in the background and what parts will be the place where students can type or work, and so on. And that actually does differentiate for the needs of some of our learners who actually respond well to that. They need that as opposed to just kind of a blank page where they're supposed to type. They actually respond better if they have this kind of rich graphic interface in which to do their work. But as it turns out, we also have learners who don't thrive in that and who find it a struggle to understand where to click and what to do. Now, part of what you could do is do what I said above. You could upload a video tutorial using Screencastify or another tool where you record how to interact with that document that is rich in images and clickable spaces that maybe the students wouldn't realize are clickable, and so on. You could actually record yourself making an example of how to do it and where to click, and then notice now that I've clicked here, I can type in this box, or notice if it's an activity where they're supposed to drag things to a new spot, notice that if I click and hold, I can drag it here. So you can support those graphically intense documents, perhaps with an example recorded in video for learners who might struggle. But we do know, and this actually got reiterated in a training last week hosted by our special education department, we have some learners who just can't interact with those documents for a variety of reasons. But one of them is that those documents actually are not able to be read by screen readers. So students who depend on a screen reader can't access those documents at all. And there are some other students who, by virtue of the nature of their particular learning need, can't process kind of all of the things on that page and understand what to do. So in Google Classroom, go ahead and provide that document, but also provide a link to a simplified or cleaner version for those who are dependent on screen readers, or for other students who just need that because they can't handle all of the busy and all the things happening on that document. If possible, include alternative text with images. So let's say you were working with Google Slides and you put an image in there. There is a way usually to edit an image so that you can add what's called alternative text, which basically is a description of the image, so that those who are dependent on that and can't see the image actually still know what was there when they move their mouse and try, and it's telling them it's telling them where their mouse is. It will actually describe the image for them. That is an extra step, and it's a step you don't complete in Google Classroom. It's really more of a step you complete in the base document where you were creating your assignment that you're going to upload to Google Classroom. And then I know that also newly popular are Bitmoji virtual classrooms. So this kind of goes back to the graphically intense documents. The Bitmoji virtual classroom really does meet the needs of some learners. it resonates with them. They respond to it better. They look at and they're like, oh my gosh, look at this space my teacher created and everything is clickable. You know, I can click here to get access to the enrichment readings for this week. If I click on the whiteboard where it says good morning class, I actually get a welcome message for the week and video from my teacher, right? So if they click and explore, they can find a lot of things. Now, just like the previous section, obviously, none of that is accessible to a screen reader. And for students who struggle to know what to do or where to go, you could perhaps upload a video showing how to interact with the virtual classroom with it. You can also build, since you're building a virtual classroom, and I know not everybody's doing this, but for those who are doing Bitmoji virtual classrooms, I'll have to find, I'll go look up my example in a minute, but you actually literally get like a template from Google Slides with like a floor and a wall, and then you go get an image of a blank whiteboard, and then you go find an image of a potted plant, you know, and you put a bookcase in there, and then you just attach links to all those things. And since you're building a room, you can build a help desk, right? You can put a little help desk in there. And if students click on that, it will lead to a clean, organized list of each item that's available, so that instead of having to figure out where it is in the virtual classroom, it leads them to a Google Doc that says, here's your reading list for the week. Here's the math problem for the week. Here's my weekly message, and so on, just for those students who need it. So the way that we're going to do all the things that are listed here in terms of if you want to upload audio or video or include images or provide an example or make a video tutorial of how to navigate something so that learners can access everything is literally by just clicking add and then choosing where it is that your supplemental resources are located and linking them. So you can see here in the background, this is an assignment screen. And there's a title and there's some instructions here that are in print only. And then over off to the right is all my class information. So when I click add, I can actually provide tools and resources that will help my learners complete the items or begin the assignments confidently and then complete them the way I hoped they would and intended that they would, because I can provide support for the instructions, examples, and so on. So you can add audio from Google Drive or as a file from your computer or as a link if you record it in certain online tools and they give you a link to the audio, like Vocaroo will give you a link or it will give you a downloadable MP3. You could link to a model or an example, or it could be something you have in your Google Drive, or it could be a file on your computer. And then let's go to look at this. So here's an original. So this is going to click out to, this is just created in Google Slides. This is a unit review kind of master template that actually has everything the students need in order to review an entire unit of study. And as you can see in the thumbnails on the left, it has a directions page to start, and the students are supposed to, based on the instructions, they're supposed to review the unit, throw the die, complete the task assigned by looking at the next slide, and complete one task for each of the 5 assignments listed to the right. So this is where the teachers would add in, notice I can't click on this. This is in the background in master slides. So the teachers would add in the notes or lesson name of all the things that they want their students to review. And then this slide provides the 6 possible tasks. They only have to do 5. And then these following slides provide a kind of a graphically rich way for students to complete each of those 5 tasks. Okay, so that's one way. But if need be, you can actually, oops, I didn't mean to do that, sorry, I meant to just click. Take the exact same information and put it here in order, including any links they will need or any other, sorry, it's stalled, or any other resources they will need in order to understand the assignment. Okay, it's not as pretty. It doesn't appear as engaging to many people, but we do have some students who will only be able to access the work if it is presented in this way. So you could actually have this in your Google Classroom, but when you're creating the assignment, you could include in the instructions, you know, there are 2 versions of this assignment, you know, please click on the one that you prefer in order to complete the work. And then you can do it that way. And it could be linked again from Google Drive, or a link or a file from your computer. And then obviously YouTube videos, if that's what will be helpful to your classes. So any questions yet before we go into another way Google Classroom has, in addition to just adding the kinds of resources that might support them with an activity? Do you have any questions before we move into another aspect that Google Classroom has built into it? Okay. So another thing we can do in Google Classroom is providing just the right resources to specific learners. And again, as I said earlier, I think we all know that this is available in Google Classroom, but maybe not. Some people don't notice it. But what you can do is you can actually, first of all, do some prep work in advance, because before you do it in Google Classroom, you'll have to have the differentiated versions of the reading or differentiated versions of the assignment that they're going to do ready, so that when you go into Google Classroom to set this all up, the various versions you will need are already ready to use. So determine the supports needed and organize and create, if necessary, the versions of the materials or the assignments that will support each learner. So if you're using Newsela or Newsela, and you have a paid license and you can get differentiated, you can get links to different like reading levels, you could make sure you have that ready, know what article you're going to do, and then you'll be able to make different posts assigned specifically to different students with only the leveled reading that is appropriate for them. Thank you. So that's important to kind of do in advance, although you could start building the assignment in Google Classroom and just save it as draft until you're ready to add the specific resources your learners will need. So another piece to that is kind of like what I referred to before. If you're using some outside tools beyond Google Drive and G Suite, for example, you're creating activities in Quizlet or the reading tool called Edgy or Kami, you'll want to either create or curate those differentiated versions in those tools first and have each version ready to go, and then get the link from Quizlet for each version and the link from Edgy and the link from Kami for sharing. And unless it's enabled to go directly to Google Classroom, which some of them are. So do that prep work first. And then when you go to Google Classroom, you actually can select specific students to receive each version of the assignment or each version of the material. This also works, by the way, if you have an announcement, but only some of your students need it. Like there are, you know, everybody came to return things to school on the day that was intended, but there were a few that didn't. And you're trying to reach out to all of them in multiple ways for the kids who didn't make it to school to return materials. And so you're using your Class Dojo and you're using Remind, but you're going to go ahead and post it in Google Classroom as well. You can actually decide who receives that post. It doesn't have to be every student. So decide which students will receive it. Now here's the rub. That does mean that in the case of an assignment that's differentiated, you're going to have to create multiple assignments, one for each version. And a little bit later in the logistics section, we'll talk about how to use the reuse post feature, which becomes really important when you're doing this kind of work, where you're sending specific tasks to some learners and different tasks to other learners. So the quick, like nitty gritty of how to do it is when you're creating any kind of assignment or material or resource in Google Classroom, the default is actually all students, right? And that's checked, and it's checked, and every student's name underneath it is checked. But if you click here to uncheck the all students box, no one's names are checked. Then you can just hand select which people are going to receive that particular resource or that version of the assignment. Now that means, again, that if you are doing an assignment where everybody in the class is ultimately going to do it, but some students are going to get one version, another group of students is going to get a second version, and another group of students is going to get a third version, you will have to create the assignment 3 times. So we're also going to be talking a little bit later about some kind of things to consider around that, because you're going to have multiple assignments in there. Okay. Do remember too that when you create an assignment, you can attach a rubric to it. And each time you attach a rubric to an assignment, that rubric actually has, when you open it up, it's named the same name as the assignment. And if need be, you can attach a differentiated rubric to each version of the assignment so that the rubric that students receive is completely accurate and appropriate for the work they are doing. This was something that I would do like in Google Classroom, primarily because I had a combo class. So I taught French 4 and AP in the same room at the same time. And a lot of the tasks, they could actually do very similar tasks. Like they might read the same document in French, but what I expected the learners to be able to do with that document was different. And so I would send one set of tasks for the document to my year 4 students, and they would have a different rubric because the targeted proficiency was also different, right? What they're aiming for versus my APs. And then for my AP kids, it would be the same reading, but a different assignment and a different rubric because their targeted proficiency was higher. So that's one example of when you might be using differentiated rubrics, right? This is also something you can do if you need to have rubrics that are aligned to a student's IEP. You would actually be able to, craft a rubric that's aligned to the IEP, and then only the student who should have that rubric would see it, because the other students in the class, if you assign one version of assignment to 5 students, the other students in the class do not see that. They don't know it was assigned to those 5 students unless those 5 students choose to talk about it. So you can differentiate, and if need be, because of confidentiality and so on, in theory, they don't know who got it. So in theory, if you have multiple students with IEPs and there's a single rubric that would be appropriate for some of them, you can assign that to all of them. They don't know who else got it. They just know that this is my assignment and this is my rubric for how I will be evaluated. And again, as I said before, every time you create a version of an assignment, if you go to you can create a new rubric and it will be attached to that version of the assignment. Another thing you can do is if you're doing the quiz assignment in Google Classroom, I don't know how many of you have tried that yet. What it does is it actually preloads a blank Google form for you that is already set up to be a quiz, meaning it's waiting for you to tell it what the right answers are so it can automatically grade. If you already had a form, you can delete the one it starts for you as a blank form and just put in the form you already did. But if you set up a Google form as a quiz, it's got the programming in it to allow you to tell it what the correct answers are. And in doing so, for most types of questions that you can program the correct answers, it will also let you program in feedback that is different for those who got an incorrect response compared to those who got a correct response. And the feedback actually allows you to add resources that the students might need. So when you're in a Google form that's set up as a quiz, you actually click in the lower left, initially in the question, it says answer key. When you click there, it brings you here to choose the correct answer, decide how many points it's going to be, if any. By the way, you can leave them at 0 for just formative work. And then you click where it says add answer feedback, and it will start with incorrect answers. You can leave it blank, but it starts there. You can type feedback, but you can also link to anything else on the web or provide a YouTube video. So you can actually look at that at their incorrect answer. It doesn't let you do a different one for different answers, unfortunately, but it will let you, as a general, like if there were 4 choices, only one was correct. For all 3 others, you could say, sorry, that was incorrect. I suggest you review the video below in order to understand how to do this task, or, you know, whatever it is that you want to say to them, you know, review the video below in order to get a better understanding of the topic and to see why this answer didn't work and help you understand what the correct answer was. Now, in the Google Forms for differentiation training, we are not talking about this actually. I'm going to be talking about a whole different feature of Google Forms. So if you were looking at that training, we aren't talking about this feedback feature actually. That's not the focus of it. So, but that is something you can build in so that when they get the form in Google Classroom, after they submit, it provides them immediate feedback based on the fact that they had a right or wrong answer, along with linked resources. And you can link or attach as many things as you want. Similarly, for correct answers, if you're wanting to encourage students to keep pursuing that particular topic and go deeper or go further, you could not only say, hey, great job, it's really awesome that you got this one correct. You might also be interested in, you know, since you did so well with this, you might be interested in this article or this video that actually allows them to go a little bit deeper, because you can also attach things for the correct answers. Okay. All right, so we're going to take a look at quickly just those things in Google Classroom, just in case anybody had any questions. So the first one I wanted to show you is how, when you are doing classwork or even a resource, so this one's an actual resource, so I'm going to edit this. Whatever it is, the first thing that I can do is I can pull down my list of students, uncheck where it says all students, and then I can scroll down and give it only to the students who need it, so that only those students will get the assignment. And now I see that it's only for 5 students. Here is where I can click to add any resources that I want. So we'll just go there. And then I can add additional resources, as we talked about, whether it's audio, video, samples, demonstrations, and so on. Okay. That is one thing that we were looking at in terms of just being able to supply that to a group of students. Now notice, it's only for those students. So that means those 5 students, when they next go into Google Classroom, they will see that there is this new resource. The other students in the class who are not checked, they will never see that the resource was added. They don't know that. That's why sometimes there are teachers in the district who've actually decided to go ahead and have their instructional aides come in as co-teachers, because their aides can send resources and support specifically to their learners without sending it to the whole class. If they are in Google Classroom as a co-teacher, they're able to actually create posts and then send them to their students that are on their caseload to support. The other piece I wanted to look at with you was adding rubrics to assignments. So actually, let's X that one out and let's do an assignment. So I'm going to edit this assignment and let's see if it'll let me. Oh, it's going to make me create a new one. Okay. Oh, that's because it's material. Never mind. Let's go to an assignment. Here we go. So I'm going to edit this assignment. Here we go. And it's got instructions. It has a sample. It has a support document for students on how to accurately get into Kami. It has these print instructions. I didn't do a video or an audio set of instructions. It's currently listed for all students, but I could change that. And here I can attach a rubric. And as you might recall, you can create a rubric from scratch or reuse a rubric from any other course. So if I go back and I go to select a rubric, this says Practice Essay 3. That was the name of the assignment. The rubric has the name of the assignment. So watch what happens if it's called Practice Essay 3 and I say select. When it opens up, unless my memory fails me, when it opens up, it will no longer say Practice Assignment 3 or Essay 3. Now it says Sample Kami. So it is a rubric just for Sample Kami. So this rubric is being used just for this version of this assignment. And I can edit it fully if I would like to by clicking on the 3 dots in order to make adjustments to what the criteria should be for the rubric, as well as the descriptions. Okay. And then in Google Forms, let's go to my drive. We'll go into Google Forms. I'm just going to show you some feedback really quickly, and then we're going to dive into the logistics and so on of a couple of things that are important to understand if you try to do these things in Google Classroom. Okay, so let's go to recent. I want to go to a different form actually, because I need one with some where I can show you how to add your feedback. Blank quiz. Okay, let's just do that one. So this blank quiz I think has nothing in it. Yep. So if I do a question here, and I think some of you might have seen this training on Google Forms before, but what is the capital of California? Okay, it's multiple choice. It's going to keep that. Look, it suggested Sacramento. Thank you for noticing that that is the correct answer. It already did my answer key for me. And now I'm just going to add some other cities that are in California. Right, Los Angeles and San Diego. Okay, so it added the answer key, but it's 0 points right now. It does note that this is the correct answer. Sorry, my dog's upset about something. I can change the points if I want or leave it 0, but I'm going to click on answer feedback, and here is where I can say, you know, review our lesson on California geography by clicking the link below. And then we're going to pretend that this link actually goes to a lesson on California geography, but it doesn't. I'm just going to put this one in because it's memorized. Text to display is so that if you have a link that is really long and would be kind of unsightly, you can make what's called a friendly link. So I'm going to hit add, save. And now it says, oh, look, we have feedback for incorrect answers. Review our lesson on California geography by clicking the link below, and it will take them to that resource that I wanted to send to them. And similarly, I can provide a different resource for my, my students who got the answer correct in case I'd like to provide them the opportunity to go further with that. Oops. Sorry, oh no, it went ahead. Sorry, that's weird. It jumped way ahead of where I was. Excuse me. All right, there we go. Okay, so another way we can differentiate in Google Classroom, and as just like within our brick and mortar classrooms back at our school sites, is by providing voice and choice for how learners demonstrate their knowledge. And some of the most common ways to do that are to provide what's called a choice board. And all the topics on the choice board give the students an opportunity to demonstrate their comprehension or their skill with a particular concept or formula or process. It's just that it provides them a number of ways to demonstrate that, and you can decide how many of those ways they need to do. 1 of the ways, 2 of the ways, 3 of the options, whatever you'd like. So there's a Google Slides version of the choice board, which I think goes back to the same one we saw earlier with that unit review, because they actually had a choice board. Oh no, this is a different one. And just remember that a lot of times when they're created like this, some learners might need that simplified view. I did not create a simplified view specifically for this particular person's choice board, but you'll notice that step 1 is to actually do the reading or the video or the vocab, whatever it is in the lesson that is like a non-negotiable. You need to review this content. But now when you're done reviewing the content that is assigned, you can go to slide 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in order to do a task. And they only need to do 1 potentially, but each task still requires them to basically demonstrate their understanding of the lesson. Okay. And the steps, the instructions tell them, pick 1, right? And just delete the other slides because you're not doing those. And so what you turn back into me will be this front slide with the topic name and so on, and then the 1 slide for the type of activity you chose to do. And like I said, it could be helpful. It does provide a really nice way for students to demonstrate their learning and to have some say in how they demonstrate their learning. This is actually almost more important now that they aren't in our classrooms, because I know sometimes when we just give them digital versions of worksheets, there's online sites where they just go click away and type in and they can actually get all the answers to it. And so we actually still don't know what they know. So if we can provide them some of these open-ended tasks that are a little more personalized, it's a little harder for them to just Google the answers to that. It is a little harder for us as teachers though to grade, right? Because they're open-ended. And in if you didn't attend the trainings, the programs I offered on how to design for distance learning, they are available in the hub. And I actually do speak at one point when we talk about practice and feedback, I actually talk a little bit about how to plan for feedback and how to be strategic so that in the end, you are only giving individual feedback probably to very few students as opposed to everybody, because there are some other ways you can ensure that learners get feedback that is usable and actionable on their work. And you might want to try to strategically prioritize them doing those things first so that there are only a few things on which you're going to be giving feedback. Okay, oh, thank you. And then Google Docs, which is just, this is a copy here. This actually is something I do in French, but I have it in English for you. This is also a choice board. It will prompt you to make a copy, but you'll probably delete everything in it. Unless you happen to be a reading teacher, then you might like it. It actually provides a total of 17 different activities students can do after free reading. It is geared for high school, so you would want to edit the tasks. And in the end, in my case, it wasn't much of a choice board, because what we did was we had some free reading each week and they completed a different task each week. And then at the end of either 9 or 8 weeks, depending on the piece of paper it was, they handed it in to me. So it wasn't really totally a choice board. They only had choice in the order in which they did the activities, but you could set up something just like this and then tell them that they only have to do 1 of the options or 2 of the options or 3 of the options and make it a true choice board. I wanted to make sure I share a couple of logistics, particularly one thing in Google Classroom, and that is the reuse post feature. Reuse post is basically the copy button in Google Classroom, and it is going to be your best friend for differentiation. It makes a new copy of something that you already posted, and it makes everything fully editable. That's important because sometimes if you, how to explain it? Sometimes there are times when you try to open up an old post and you go to edit it, you realize certain things are locked out. For example, if you attached a template, a Google Doc, for example, that students were going to use, they were going to have to type in it and turn it back in. If you go back in later to edit it, it's locked out. You can't edit that piece of it. So reuse post is the only thing that makes everything about the assignment completely editable. It brings everything over, but you have full access to edit everything in it. It is also critical for differentiation because it is the only way to schedule precise time and date for when an assignment becomes visible across multiple classes. So for elementary school teachers, this isn't as much of a problem, but for secondary teachers, it is. But also, it is the only way for you to copy, let's say you gave one version of an assignment to 5 students, and you don't want to have to retype all the instructions. There's only a small piece that's going to change, or maybe it's only the attached resources themselves that change, but all the instructions are the same. Well, if you give it to 5 students, the only way for you to copy it so that you can keep everything that's the same, but only edit what you need, such as the attached resource, you need to use reuse post. That's how you can give the same assignment to different groups of students. Another way reuse post actually would be really helpful is if you are creating group assignments in Google Classroom where students are going to work in groups, you can create a Google Doc or a Google slide deck that the group will use as their like their place where they're going to do their work. You would need to create one for each group, even if it's exactly the same, and name it carefully, as we'll talk about in a minute. And then you create one post for group A and give them their version with edit permission. And now they can all edit that version of the document, and it's going to be able to be turned into you. Then hit reuse post, start working on it for group B, find all the little students who are in group B, and find your group B version of the exact same blank Google Doc or Google slide deck or whatever they need and attach it there. But reuse post is the only way you can basically make a copy of an assignment so that you can redistribute it to a different group of students in the same class. So you have to create the post in one class first with all of the settings for that class or for that group of students who's going to get it in that class. You just basically do it as normal, right? create the assignment, decide which students are going to get it, attach everything you want to attach, whether it's support with audio or video, an example, a model, whatever it is, all of that support, create it, post it, it's done. Now you're thinking, okay, that's great. I did the version for that group, but now I basically need to do the same thing, but with a different set of resources or with a slightly different assignment for the next group of students. So then you go back to the class. You open the class that needs it. It might be the same class, but you open whatever class needs the next version of that assignment. And from stream or classwork, when you hit the create button, you choose reuse post. And then you choose the post that you want to copy. Sorry, my tools are in the way. You choose the post that you want to copy and you finish your editing. So open the version that needs it, go to classwork, hit create, choose reuse post. It will open to one of your classes. So you might have to hit this back arrow. I'm going to show you that in a live demo in a minute to get a list of all the classes in which you are a teacher. Select the class that has the version of the post you want to use if it didn't choose that class automatically, because it might have, and then select the post you want to reuse and it will open fully editable in that class that you wanted to create it in. So let's do a live demo of that. Hold on a second. My tools are constantly in the way. So if I go over to my Google Classroom practice class and I've created an assignment that I was working on, or a piece of material for 5 students, and I'm trying not to post anything because there are actually people in this class. But let's say this one actually posted and it was for 5 students. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna post it. And I'm gonna say, please ignore doing a live demo. We'll just do that. That way I can actually do it for you. Okay. They will see their streams immediately. Yes. So 5 students. And so that now is here in their stream. I can take a look at it anytime, and I can even see, right, which students have it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit create, reuse post, and it picked a different class. See, it picks the class from which you last reused a post. So I had to hit the back arrow to get my full list of classes because I actually wanted the post from this same class. So Google Classroom practice class, sample resource, reuse it. It's going to reopen it, fully editable, right? So that now I can choose different, oh, let me turn that off. I can choose different students to receive it this time. Okay, and I can change this resource or change the instructions, right? Group 2, and change the instructions, change anything I need, add additional resources that the other group didn't have. Whatever it is I need to do, I can fix here, and then I can post it or schedule it for them, but I'm actually going to X that out. Okay, so that's just a quick demo, but that feature is really important if you're giving basically the same assignment or resource to different groups of students, and you're using that feature where you select which students get it, and you don't want to have to retype and reattach everything from scratch because much of it is going to stay the same and you really only needed to edit a small piece. So that reuse post is going to be your best friend for that. So I have another set of instructions there. Okay, perfect. And then considerations for organization. I actually got this from a lady named Casey Bell who runs a blog called Shake Up Learning. It's fabulous. So I linked her full post there. But what she did, one thing she said that I really wanted to pull out was if you're doing different versions of posts or different versions of an assignment, make sure you give each version a name that not only identifies the topic or the assignment, but also in some way gives you a sense of which students received it. And I would recommend, and I don't think she said this, but I would recommend that any associated links, to the extent possible, as far as how well you're able to edit information about them, have the same or similar naming convention so that you can tell that this is the version of the Google Doc template for students that went to group A. And this is the Google Doc template for group B. And then the assignment in Google Classroom is, you know, group project, group A. and the other group has group project group B, so that everything, when you're looking for it, you know who got what, and that it's not just all named the same thing. Because if you reuse the post, it's initially going to have the same title, right? Unless you edit that. So it is recommended that you give each version of a resource or each version of an assignment a name that will help you know that it's differentiated and something about who has it, right? So you might say To Kill a Mockingbird, Chapter 4, Group 1. Be sure the instructions are clear, concise, and specific, so students are less likely to have questions about what to do. And then I would reiterate as well to, if possible, provide those additional supports to those instructions, whether it's an audio recording, a video, a sample, a model, whatever it is that's going to support them. If there is going to be a rubric used to grade them, go ahead and include it in the assignment so students know how they will be graded, because they actually can see the rubric as well. And then she actually suggests assigning a group leader who will be responsible for sharing all needed resources with the group and submitting any group products. So in the assignment instructions, it's going to these 5 students, but we're going to make Michaela the group leader. And Michaela is going to be responsible for collecting all your work and submitting it. That is kind of a teacher preference thing, but some teachers find it really helpful to know who to go to in a group. If no assignment has been turned in, who is the person I should reach out to in order to see what's going on and what support they need. So what I wanted to end with was a chance for us to look at differentiation in Google Classroom through the lens of one framework for differentiation called Universal Design for Learning. And so some of you are familiar with this already. It essentially is a series of guidelines along 3 criteria called engagement, representation, action, and expression. The really key thing about Universal Design for Learning is that its intent is that it's used by educators to plan for differentiation from the beginning, rather than do differentiation as a response after the fact when it becomes evident that, oh gosh, the students clearly didn't understand or didn't get what they needed. Because if we can plan for differentiation from the beginning, we'll actually meet their needs from the beginning and save them time and us time along the way, and ensure better success, students who are more purposeful, more motivated, more resourceful and knowledgeable, and also more strategic and more successful overall. So my thinking was that as I highlight each area, we can, in the chat or with the microphones, see if there's anything we've heard about or know about in our own experience from Google Classroom that can help. So starting in the engagement column, in the first row that says recruiting interest, one of the things that they talk about in the Universal Design for Learning guidelines is to optimize individual choice and autonomy, value authenticity, and also minimizing threats and distractions. So looking at the first one, for example, I was curious about any ideas you might have either on your microphones or in the chat for how we see opportunities in Google Classroom to optimize choice and autonomy for our learners. One thing Zoom doesn't tell me is if people are typing. I've used some other online platforms before where you can actually see a symbol when someone is typing. So I don't know if people are typing or not. So if you are, please feel free to continue to do so. I'm going to go to the second row. Sustaining effort and persistence. So how can the features of Google Classroom, for example, make it easier for students to understand the goals and objectives? Or how can Google Classroom help us vary the demands and resources in order to optimize challenge? Because one of the other really key factors of the Universal Design for Learning framework is that this is not about watering down curriculum. It's about optimizing challenge and getting each learner to work at their maximum level of challenge that is appropriate for them in order to ensure, true learning and retention and ability to use new information. So how can Google Classroom help us in the ways that we've seen today, or in other ways that you know about, make the goals and objectives of a particular activity clear, How can Google Classroom help us vary the resources or vary the demands in order to optimize the level of challenge to be the most appropriate level of challenge for each learner? We didn't talk today about how Google Classroom can foster collaboration and community. I think some of you might have attended some other trainings where we did talk about ways that we can really bring students' voices into the heart of Google Classroom, but that wasn't the focus today. I'll check on the chat at any point if any of you have anything you'd like to add, but you're also welcome to turn on your microphones, please. Over in the second column of representation, which is kind of the what of learning, and we want to provide multiple means of representation. So how can we use Google Classroom to offer ways of customizing the display of information so that each learner can kind of engage in the intake of information in the way that works best for them? How do we offer alternatives for auditory or for visual information using the tools available as we post materials and assignments in Google Classroom? We talked about this a little bit today too. So how can we in Google Classroom clarify vocabulary and symbols by adding visuals? But as we create posts or assignments, we can link visuals, we can link explanations and audio and other support or examples and models in order to clarify items that they might be seeing or not understanding. And that goes right to this other facet of representation, which is illustrating through multiple media as opposed through one type of media or text. You know, one thing that we can do in Google Classroom as well is activate or supply background knowledge. So if need be, we didn't talk about this explicitly, but it goes along with what we said right at the beginning. We could, as part of the things we link to an assignment, we could link resources to bring students back to some important background knowledge or prior knowledge and skills that laid a foundation for the work they're about to do today. We could just relink those and provide those in that new assignment in order to ensure that students kind of have that just-in-time support if they need it as something they can draw on. And then in physical action, how can we vary the methods for response and navigation? So we talked about making sure that students who need it have access to click and go to a simpler or cleaner version of the document. Other students actually need a manipulative version where they can drag things around and move them, and that's visually intense or more intense. How do we optimize access to tools and assistive technologies? We talked a little bit about some ways we can do that within the content that we post in Google Classroom. And then, as you can see, there is a lot of overlap in the framework, like most frameworks. So again, using multiple media and multiple tools. So students having options to respond in different ways. That actually is something that when we do that student choice and voice, we want to make sure we're providing choices that allow them to express their knowledge and skills in the content area in the ways that are going to be most likely to be successful for each learner. So just the way we can include audio, video, images, models, and so on, so can students. They can attach a whole variety of things to assignments when they submit them in Google Classroom. And it would be important to, if you're doing choice boards or something like that, consider offering support for them to respond in ways that might be different from just typing a response. And then definitely using Google Classroom to the best of our abilities to really manage the delivery of information and resources. Really, your best tool for that in Google Classroom is the topics feature on the classwork page, because remember that the stream can't be organized. The only thing you can do with the stream is take one post that got buried at the bottom somewhere and you can move it to the top. Classwork can be organized into topics. So the resources you'll have is a link to the full UDL guidelines. Scroll down to a clickable version of that graphic organizer from the previous page. The support document for Google Classroom, and I will be adding this slide deck there as well so that it's in that space. The Casey Bell blog post on differentiating in Google Classroom. And then a link to the recording of this training is coming soon. So I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon. I hope you're having a good week. And please let me know if there's anything else I or others can be doing to support you as you look at how to wind down your year and start gearing up for what lays ahead, which is still kind of an open question for us all, but we are still ready to support you as you start thinking about that.